Hi, everybody. It's David Fisher here from Hazel Tree Group. Just want to welcome you back for this week's topic that I plan to tell you about. This week's topic is mental health and emergency services. It's nice to see you all again, and this is a topic that I've had a few interactions with police and emergency services with my mental health. So it's a great topic for me to give a little bit of talk on today, so something to help you out. I'm basing my information today on my personal interactions with the emergency services and my own personal mental health. And it's not about anybody else's mental health. It's not about the stories I've heard or seen on TV. There's not going to be any of that. It's based on my own personal experience with these individuals. At no time am I going to bash the emergency services people. They've got a hard enough job to do, and then they have to deal with us who have mental health disorders, and we're not in the greatest of shape, and we're in a crisis situation, and we're not thinking clearly. And they have a lot of work to do, and hopefully they do a great job when they get to you. And today's experiences that I'm going to share with you are going to share a few that were and some that weren't. Today, I'm going to speak from the heart. It could get very real for some people here to listen to this, those of you who know me and those of you who don't. This is reality of a mental health individual who's succeeding in life, but falls down every once in a while and has to deal with emergency services. So this is just some of the things that we can deal with, and hopefully things work out all in the end, and I'll talk about that later. I've had several experiences with emergency services people. But before I get into that, mental health and emergency services, I'm going to give you a little information on myself so you can understand where I'm coming from. In some of my posts, you will notice that I've talked about this. The one called Jailbreak was going to be mentioned here, and a few others about what goes on when you have a person in crisis. So let's just get into that, a little history of myself. I'm an adopted young fella who got really, really lucky in the family that he got involved in. They loved me to death. They taught me great values in life. They taught me some great life lessons. Older brother, the same. The things that they taught are still ingrained in me, and I still do things today for these mental health talks that I do. One of the things that we do is we were taught to give back to the community. Absolutely, give back to your community. Volunteer wherever you can. Make your life worthwhile. You basically, if there's somebody that you know that is struggling with food, etc., and you don't have a whole lot of money, you're still buying stuff for them because that's what you do. You help people out. That's what your goal in life is. It's not about you and how far you can get and the money that you make or what titles you have at the end of it all. And he who dies with the most toys wins. No, that's not the case. You actually help people out. The things that I was also taught were respect your elders, respect other people, the diversity that other people have. And I've dealt with an awful lot of people who have many disabilities that I've been doing all my life. I've been being with people like that, so I'm used to this. And there was something else that was taught to me that I broke one of these little, I call them commandments that my parents used to give us, but was respect for women. And you never hurt a woman. You protect them. That's what you're supposed to do as a man. You're supposed, maybe this is old way of doing things, I don't know, but I grew up with it, and that's the way I believe things to happen. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't happen the way you want it to. The first time I had an experience with emergency services with my mental health was I had left a job to go to another job that I really, really wanted to do. I mean, I really, really wanted this job. I got the job. I was really happy. 6 months later, I was out of that job because Well, I just maybe wasn't as good as I thought I was at it. And I was feeling very depressed. I was literally very depressed. I wouldn't talk. I curled up on the bed. I wouldn't eat. I slept every time. I slept everywhere. But I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't take my meds. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't even talk to my doctor when he called. I just didn't feel like talking to him. I thought, honestly, life was over because I had put everything into this little area of my life and it failed. And I thought, I'm done. Unfortunately, what ended up happening was emergency services were called to the house and they showed up. When they showed up, there was 2 officers that showed up, one male, one female. The female officer came into the bedroom where I was lying down in the fetal position, and the male officer stood by the door. Apparently, if I ran, he was going to catch me, right? Well, never really got that far. What ended up happening was, because I was in a crisis situation, I was quite sarcastic and very lippy, and I probably shouldn't have said some of the things I said to the officer, but I did. It's just the state of mind that I was in. Unfortunately, she got very, very edgy. She started to pace. She started, backing and forth, and walking back and forth. And she finally got to the point where she said to me, okay, listen, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way, which meant they were either going to take me out to the police car, put me in the back and take me to the hospital and get assessed, etc. Or, handcuffs, possibly face down on the floor, whatever the case may be. And to me, that kind of interaction was, for someone in crisis, even though I was being sarcastic, and yes, I pushed her buttons, of course I did. I was just not myself. But really, do we have to get to that point? We see it enough on TV with many other things. But this was something that was happening to me, the easy way or the hard way. Well, of course, I didn't feel like being thrown to the ground in handcuffs, so I went out the easy way. Ended up going to the hospital, get assessed, and the next thing I know, I'm finding myself, I think it was almost 2 weeks in hospital in Kingston at the time. Like I said, I've had many calls of 911, and most of the time it's ended very well. But, these things do happen. The next time that I ended up with 911 was a little bit more serious, and this is where life gets real. For some reason or another, I believe I was having an argument with my partner, and I believe she said something to me, and for some reason, I don't know why, but I flew off the handle. I was from 0 to 150 in seconds, and I was seeing red. I hated what was said. Why at the time, I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but this was the case. The argument stemmed a little bit longer, and in my haste to get out of the house, unfortunately, my partner blocked me and I pushed her. I left the house, didn't realize that she had injured herself, unfortunately, and she called 911 to find me because she had not seen me in this state before. I was pretty PO'd. So she called 911 to find me. When the police got there, their concern was, you guessed it, assault, domestic assault, because I pushed her and she fell into some furniture. Well, I didn't know that was happening. I had no idea. And she basically said, no, that's not the case. I want you to find him because I know he's going to hurt himself. That's my MO. When I leave or do something, all I want to do is harm myself. I don't want to harm anyone else. So here I was, wandering around the streets, waiting for something to happen. Eventually, a few days, I think it was 24 or 48 hours later, I was in police custody. Spent the evening in jail, went to court the following morning. Case was not heard. Went to a provincial jail overnight, which really shouldn't have happened, but I did. And because I was still in a bad state, they asked me if I was still thinking about harming myself. And of course, yeah, I was. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be in a provincial jail. I wanted out in any way I could. So here I was, provincial jail in a mental health wing. I don't know if that was any good or not, but all I can tell you is what they give you to wear when you say you're not, you want to harm yourself, is it's like a moving blanket sewn together with arms and a pair of socks. That's what you get. And you sleep on a concrete slab that's heated, but that's it. That's what you got. Shouldn't have been there in the first place, but here I am in a mental health wing in the provincial jail. Back to court the following morning. Spoke to a lawyer like seconds before my case was heard. Agreed that I would get released back into my partner's company and go back home. What they didn't tell me was they were still pursuing the charges. So I ended up being on probation for that for 1 year. At no time, I'm telling you this for a fact, at no time in my time from the jail, from Kingston Jail to the provincial jail back, not one person from the mental health unit ever came in to see me or offer any help. None. That shouldn't happen. If you're there on a mental health issue, there should be somebody there offering you some help, maybe calming you down, maybe putting your mind in the right frame, like anything, but there was nothing. Unfortunately, because I was fingerprinted and photographed and now on probation, which is completely wrong, but it happened, so I have to deal with it, right? I did. Finished my year of probation. Nothing happened. Things were getting better. I was starting to learn more. I read a ton more on my illness. What happened for me to do what I just did? I was reading everything in sight. I was learning. I went to volunteer at the, I was volunteering at the Canadian Mental Health Association prior to. It was eye-opening for me on what happened. The last interaction I had with emergency services was really bad. It was almost 2 years ago now. And I got very angry at home. And my MO is to run away and harm myself. So I took off. Family had no idea who I was for 3 days. I didn't even turn on my phone, wouldn't talk to anyone, didn't care who was calling me, didn't care who was messaging me. I didn't want to talk to them. I had a mission, and my mission was to do some harm. What ended up happening was I turned on my phone for some oddball reason. I was really tired. I hadn't slept much in 3 days. I was sleeping in the car. The phone kept ringing, this unknown number, and I kept deleting it. Finally, after about 10 times in a row this person called, I yelled into the phone, "What?" And the next thing I know, it was a police officer from the area that I live in. He had called. They were going to turn my phone on anyway, so it was coincidental that I just answered it. But what ended up happening after that was they said, "I'm going to send an officer over to see you where I was at this time in Northern Ontario." I get a knock at the door where I'm staying at the hotel because I really needed a night's sleep because I was just beat. And I opened the door. There wasn't one officer that showed up. Five officers showed up at the door. I'm still in crisis. I'm still wanting to go somewhere to harm myself, but I needed rest so I could get there. And what do you think was going through my head? 5 guys show up. I'm thinking, dude, I'm in some serious trouble here. But I also got really scared real quick because I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, I'm hundreds and hundreds of miles from home, and there's 5 officers at my door. Turned out actually not bad because the one officer that came in and kept the other ones at bay, there was 2 inside, was very good at what he did. He was very calm. He kept the other officers back. His body language was very relaxed. His tone of voice was very relaxed. And it almost sounded as if he had some sort of training in mental health issues like mine. Unlike the other one, do this the easy way or the hard way, right? Like, what is that? To me, that doesn't mean I don't think they've had any training in that. This guy seemed to have all of the right things going on. He made me relaxed. He got me engaged in a conversation, even though my focus was somewhere else. But this guy was switched on, and I trusted him. I ended up spending a week in a hospital in Northern Ontario. And you're thinking, Northern Ontario, what are hospitals like up there? Well, I got to tell you, the doctor that was there, the mental health doctor, super switched on. The nurses, male and female nurses, were really switched on. They were good at dealing with the patients and getting them to talk and getting them to open up a little bit. And it's a good thing that after the one incident that I mentioned earlier, that I actually read about my illness. And I've been doing that ever since. Reading anything online, Canadian mental health, Canadian addictions and mental health, anything in medical journals about mental health and how things can get better for you. I love that. I've been learning so much about it that when I trusted this officer, I knew that I was going to be in good hands. I knew I wasn't going to get handcuffed. In fact, what ended up happening was I trusted him so much, and he trusted that I was going to be okay, that instead of putting me in the back seat of his truck, he actually put me in the front seat with him. That doesn't happen very often, unless you're doing a ride along, but I wasn't doing a ride along that day. So this is a positive. This guy in Northern Ontario actually was really good at what he did. And the doctors were very good. The nurses were great. After 7 days, I was released from the hospital and went home. My question is what's next? Not for me per se, but for everybody else as well. What happens if you have schizophrenia, bipolar 1, or you have any other mental health that you're dealing with and sometimes it just goes off the rails? What's next? Can a person like myself, who is starting to be in crisis, actually remember a local toll-free number to call, like a 1-800 number, help me, I'm in crisis kind of thing? You really think that somebody in a mental health crisis situation is actually going to remember that number? Is the person that witnessing this particular problem, are they going to remember the number, or are they going to have to search for it on their fridge? Is there a local number that I'm supposed to call? I can tell you for a fact that it's happened to me that once I was in crisis and you called that local number, they would not come to your house if the individual was in crisis. If they weren't in crisis right away, but something was happening and they thought they might, they would then come. Seems to me that doesn't make sense. If you call it a crisis line, the person should be able to come and be in crisis. Which leads me to the greatest thing that I've heard since, God only knows when, since I was diagnosed with bipolar 2, is that the government of Canada and the CRTC have come up with an idea that they should have a 3-digit number. A 3-digit number that you can call for mental health crisis. What a novel idea, don't you think? Instead of dialing 911 and getting an angry officer who's had maybe a bad bacon and tomato sandwich or something, these people are fully trained in mental health and can do something. Now, this 3-digit number, they started the consultations in September of 2021, which was great. But how does it look for you and I? Like, what happens here? The 3-digit number across Canada for mental health crisis, how is it going to work? Well, in my opinion, and how I thought it might work for people, and this is just my feelings of what you've just heard in my reactions and interactions with emergency services. I don't know if it's possible because of budgets and smaller towns and so on and so forth. But if you call a 3-digit number for mental health, an individual who is trained in mental health crisis can come towards your place. Will an officer join them, or will an officer be present, take them? Are they part of the OPP or the local police department? Do they come together and the officer stays behind a bit and lets the individual take care of the crisis? If they realize that the crisis isn't going to go anywhere, then the police may be able to step in. Do places in the smaller towns out in Northern Ontario where I was, do they have the budget to have somebody on 24/7 as a mental health crisis worker? Probably not. Do all OPP detachments have that? Probably not. Do all cities have that? Bigger cities? Probably not. Will they? I don't know. It's hard to say what they're going to do, but I would like to see the mental health crisis worker first. Because once you see that uniform and you're in crisis, sometimes they see in that uniform sets you further off. It's now a fight or flight mode to get out of there. That's never any good for anybody, because this is where things go wrong, and this is where the stories pop up in the news. I don't want that happening to anybody. It's just not the way it should be. Unfortunately, there's going to be instances like that, but you can't, nothing's perfect. What I can think of is that there is good things to happen when the CRTC and the Government of Canada gets this going. It can only be better than what it is. No one wants to deal with the police when you're in a crisis, because everybody's going to react differently. You heard my one where I was really sarcastic with the young lady, and she got tired of me real quick. I don't blame her, really. I was a bit of a dick. But what if I wasn't sarcastic and I was just being a jerk about things? Would she have still handcuffed me? Would she still put me down on the floor? Chances are she probably kicked my butt. But that's not what I want. Going into a hospital and trying to get better from this, you're in a crisis for a reason. Something happened. What you don't need is something else happening while you're there. Discussions for everybody for later on. This is fantastic. I believe the 3-digit mental health number. Call your local MPP. Ask him or her how it's going. What it's going to be like in your area. What can you do to help? Are there local mental health areas or agencies around your area that can be part of it? It can only get better for us. Everybody out there. And I want you to believe that, because that's what I believe. I believe that after all my experiences, it can only get better. But you also have to make yourself better. You also have to want to read about your illness. You also want to make it work for yourself. You want to succeed with yourself. I'm living proof that I can succeed. I can do pretty much anything I want. And I've done an awful lot of things with my mental health. But I've also succeeded with my mental health going to work at places and different things and experiencing life. It hasn't really slowed me down a great deal, but it has slowed me down sometimes for sure. Think about this. Call your MPP. Make sure it works for you guys. Have yourself a wonderful day. Till next time, I'm David Fisher from Hazel Tree Group. Please drop me a line at www.hazeltreegroup.net, or you can actually send me an email at hazeltreegroup@gmail.com. Talk to y'all later.